Page 72, Proportion. An artist can create interesting compositions by manipulating proportion. Proportion in artworks is the relationship of the parts to each other and to the whole work. Standard proportion describes a person or an object that seems to have appropriate height, width, and depth compared to its surroundings. Altered proportion describes objects or people whose proportions have been changed or altered. As a principle of design, proportion has to do with one part compared to another within a work of art. An artist must also consider the scale of the objects and people within the artwork. For example, a furniture designer must build desks and chairs to fit people, so the furniture is built on a human scale. Look at the seated figures in the photograph of the temple. Are they built on a human scale? How can you tell? Artists sometimes highlight unusual size relationships by their placement of objects in a composition. As you read in Unit 1, placing an object in the foreground, middle ground, or background is a clue to its size and its distance from the viewer. By manipulating the placement of an object, an artist can create unusual size relationships. Page 73. Altering proportions. Study the way the artist has manipulated proportion in this composition. In the top panel, a seated human figure is smaller than the human hand behind it, which is about the same size as the human eyeball in the background. These altered proportions give an eerie sense of unreality to the work. Now look at the bottom panel. How has the artist altered the proportions? What do you think the artist is trying to say by changing the proportions of the objects in this artwork so dramatically? Page 74. In this sculpture, Claes Oldenburg, 1929, has made an object that is unusually very small and overlooked, the humble clothespin, into the focal point of a busy intersection between office buildings. Notice these details. The size of the artwork makes it impossible to overlook. Even though the clothespin towers over the cars and trees beneath it, the proportions of the clothespin's parts are normal in relationship to each other. Proportion and emphasis. Works of art are called exaggerated when they have objects with distorted or exaggerated proportions to show emphasis. Artworks that have smaller than life proportions are called miniature artworks. This sculpture is monumental. Its proportions are much larger than life. Why do you think Claes Oldenburg chose to create a monumental sculpture of a clothespin? Turn to page 88. Unity. If all the parts of an artwork look right together, the artwork is unity. Unity is the quality of seeming whole, complete, or harmonious. Artists can achieve unity in several ways. For example, a painter might repeat a color or a shape in several areas of the composition, or use a color scheme such as analogous or monochromatic to create a unified work of art. Notice how French painter Henri Matisse, 1869 to 1954, used pattern and color to unify this composition. Most of the colors are tints and shades of the primary colors red, blue, and yellow. Matisse used red as the background color to tie the whole composition together. He balanced that vast area of red with the small red building in the distance. Matisse used shades of blue to emphasize the progressive plant patterns on the tablecloth. Then he echoed the pattern on the wallpaper, whereas Matisse used other shades of blue to unify the composition. Look outside the window. Matisse introduced yellow with the geometric shape of the lemons sitting on the table. In the plate, he repeated the shape and color in the flowers visible through the window, as well as those on the vase on the table. What kind of balance did he employ in his artwork? How do these elements provide unity to the painting? Unity with shapes and colors on page 89. Notice how Marley Whitehouse Home from 1949 used balanced proportion in rhythm and pattern to create a unified composition. Because the visual properties are very similar on each side of the center line, the viewer can describe this composition as being symmetrically balanced. All the fish have similar proportions, and they are painted with similar patterns of dots and color. This repetition creates a regular rhythm that is restful, yet interesting to the eye. What other techniques or elements of art did Whitehouse Home use to achieve unity in this painting? Page 90. An assemblage, as you discovered in Unit 1, is a sculpture made with found objects. In this assemblage, American Louis Nevelson, a sculptor, used shape and color to achieve unity. Look for these details. The artwork is composed of a series of rectangular boxes with similar proportions, each of which contains a different pattern of shape. Everything in the composition is painted the same color. Unifying found objects. Nevelson often used single colors to unify a sculpture. She is best known for her monochromatic artworks, created around the time that she made this assemblage. Most of her artworks from this period feature open wooden boxes stacked to make walls. In the boxes, Nevelson would arrange pieces of broken furniture and bits of wood to create interesting pattern. Nevelson once said that she worked with found objects like these because at the time she could not afford to work with anything else. Now, let's look back. Look at the piece. It's all black. Black unifies the composition. She has shapes inside it as well. These shapes and the lines that are used to make the shapes also help unify the composition. Looking back at the fish on page 89, all of the fish being a fish shape with the dots on the fish help unify the composition because they're all alike. They may not all be the same color, but they're all of the same shape, the same pattern to them, so that helps unify the composition. Henry Matisse, looking at his red painting over here on page 88, if you look at all the red ties it all together, and then the way that he intertwines his yellow throughout the piece and the blue throughout the piece to create his asymmetrical design also creates the unity. Now, going on to variety on page 92. Variety is a composition. Is unified but has no variety, it can appear visually boring. Variety, the use of different elements to add interest to a work of art, is the final principle of design. It works hand in hand with unity to create a pleasing composition in an artwork with many repeated elements. An artist can introduce a variety to add emphasis and meaning. This is one of Belgian artist René Magritte's early works of art. Magritte created it soon after finishing art school, when he worked as a designer for a wallpaper factory. While the designs he found have created for wallpaper would focus on repetition to achieve unity, this composition introduces variety yet remains unified. In a composition dominated by geometric shapes, the natural shapes stand out and add variety. For example, notice how each human figure is different from the others, in both color and shape. On the other hand, the houses in the background have a similar color and shape. Where else can you detect the principle of variety in this artwork? Color. Page 93. Variety using lines and color. This painting is one of the best-known works of art by Dutch painter Judith Leister. At first glance, the painting looks so unified that it is difficult to see the variety Leister has introduced. She uses lines and color to achieve subtle variations. For example, look at the lines made by the flute on the wall, the violin bow, and the flute in the boy's hands. The lines form an arc from right to left, drawing the viewer's attention to the boy's face, where Leister captures the play of light by using variations in hue. Where else has Leister used color to introduce variety? Look at his clothes, the variations of the shadows, his hat being red, the slight blue to gray in the wall, the green in the chair. Page 94. Variety in textiles. How did the artist create variety? Variety is as important in textiles as it is in all other types of art, such as paintings and sculptures. The artist's use of limited colors in this textile helps provide unity. With so many repeating patterns and colors, variety is essential to the success of this work of art. Look for these details. Each of the 2 animals in the composition is unique. It appears only once in the design. The figures, though very small, are facing in different directions and performing a variety of tasks. The patterns of shapes at the top and bottom are different. The back color of the horse adds interest to the limited color palette. Art in South Asia. This work of art was created by an artist in India, which is in South Asia, where artists traditionally have been held in great esteem. All forms of art, including dance, visual art, literature, and music, are thought to be linked, so it is important that an artist is in one discipline know the other disciplines well. In South Asian tradition, painters rank just behind sculptors in importance. Painters consider line to be the most important part of the composition and work hard to say as much as possible with each artwork they create.